For over 700 years, the mighty Roman Empire held an absolute, terrifying grip over the Mediterranean Sea. With a massive fleet of 1,000 warships, the waters belonged entirely to them. The Muslims, on the other hand, were masters of the desert. They had zero experience in naval warfare. Yet, long before the Islamic Empire even expanded, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was resting at the home of his aunt, Haram in Medina. Suddenly, he woke up with a profound smile on his face. When his aunt asked why he was smiling, he revealed a breathtaking vision. He had just been shown a glimpse of the future, where warriors of his ummah were sailing across the vast oceans for battle, sitting proudly on their ships like kings upon thrones. Amazed, Haram asked him to pray that she would be among that army. The Prophet simply replied, "You will certainly be among them." But how did a desert-dwelling people with no ships manage to build an armada and shatter a 700-year-old undefeated naval superpower? Let's find out. After the Prophet PBUH, during the era of Caliph Umar, the Muslims had become the world's biggest superpower. The Muslim army had spread everywhere, east and west. But the Muslims still had one major weakness: the sea. The Roman Empire repeatedly used naval routes to launch attacks on the Muslims because, up until now, the Muslims did not have a navy of their own. Because of this, during Caliph Umar's reign, his governor Muawiyah sent him a letter stating that the time had come for the Muslims to build their own powerful navy. But Caliph Umar strictly refused. The Roman Empire had ruled this sea for the past 700 years and possessed the world's largest navy, 1,000 warships. This dominance was why the entire sea was often called the Roman Sea. In contrast, the Muslims were people of the desert and had absolutely no experience fighting battles on the ocean. However, as soon as Uthman became the new caliph after Umar, things began to change. Uthman appointed Muawiyah, who was previously a governor of a small region under Umar, as the governor of all of Syria, Sham. Once again, Muawiyah sent the exact same letter to his cousin, Caliph Uthman. But Uthman replied, "When Umar was stopping you from building a navy, I was standing right," was still denied. But Muawiyah continuously pleaded with Caliph Uthman for permission. In one letter, he even wrote, "The Roman island of Cyprus is so close to us that we can even hear the sound of their dogs barking here." By the way, this was just a metaphor used by Muawiyah. The sound of dogs couldn't actually reach that far. Finally, due to Muawiyah's persistence, Caliph Uthman gave him permission to attack Cyprus. But Uthman laid down one strict condition. You can only build a navy if you truly believe fighting on ships is safe. To prove this, all of you generals must take your wives along with you on this naval campaign. Muawiyah accepted Caliph Uthman's condition and ordered the creation of Islam's very first navy. But there was a massive problem. No one among the Muslims knew how to build giant warships. So how did they manage to build this navy? Actually, many years prior, before the Muslims had conquered these territories, the lands were under Roman rule. The Roman Empire had built two massive shipbuilding factories for their navy in Palestine and Egypt. These factories produced massive warships called dromons. These ships were so gigantic that a single ship could carry up to 300 warriors at a time. When the Muslims conquered these territories from the Romans, these two shipbuilding factories also fell into their hands. Initially, they were of no use to the Muslims, but now, under Caliph Uthman's orders, these factories were reopened. Muawiyah summoned Christian engineers and told them to build warships, not for the Roman Empire anymore, but for the Muslims. And just like that, Islam's first navy began to take shape. As soon as the first fleet of ships was ready, following Uthman's orders, Muawiyah and his generals took their wives and set sail to conquer Cyprus. Now, here is a fascinating detail. The wife of one of Muawiyah's generals was none other than Haram. This was the exact same Haram who had asked the Prophet to pray for her inclusion in the naval army, to which he had replied, "You will certainly be among them." As soon as the Muslim army reached Cyprus, the people of Cyprus completely surrendered to them without a fight. This was the Islamic Navy's very first victory. However, shortly after arriving, Haram fell from her horse and was martyred. Her grave remains in Cyprus to this day as Hala Sultan. For the next 4 years, Cyprus remained under Muslim control. But after 4 years, as the Muslim navy expanded with even more ships, Muawiyah advanced further with this fleet, heading straight toward the Roman Empire's capital, Constantinople, Istanbul. It is said that the Muslims got so close to the Roman capital that they could see the Roman emperor's fortress with their own eyes, while the Roman Emperor Constans watched the Muslim army approach. The Muslims were entirely ready to attack the capital, motivated by a hadith of the Prophet PBUH that promised paradise to the first Muslim army to attack the city of the Roman emperor. But just as Muawiyah advanced toward the capital, he received news that a rebellion had broken out behind them in Cyprus. Hearing this, Muawiyah abandoned the attack on the capital and rushed his entire fleet back to Cyprus at full speed, reconquering it once again by force. However, seeing the Muslim army coming so close to his capital with swords drawn was the final straw for the Roman emperor. He could not tolerate it anymore. He decided it was time to show the Muslims the true might of the Roman navy and teach them what real naval warfare looked like. Emperor Constans personally took command of 500 Roman warships and set sail to attack the Caliphate. These ships traveled day and night, rapidly advancing toward the Muslims. But as these 500 ships approached Cyprus, the Romans were stunned to see that a fleet of 200 Muslim warships was already waiting for them. The news of the Roman emperor's attack had already reached Caliph Uthman, who immediately ordered both the governor of Syria, Muawiyah, and the governor of Egypt, Abdullah, to mobilize their entire navy and intercept the emperor. Now, these two generals stood before the massive Roman navy with their 200 ships. Because Abdullah bin Sa'ad, the governor of Egypt, commanded more ships than Muawiyah, he was appointed the supreme commander for this battle. As the Muslim and Roman navies faced off, there was a critical issue. The ocean winds were blowing strongly against the Muslims, pushing their ships backward. If the battle started then, the Roman navy could easily use the wind to crush the Muslim fleet, and the Muslims would be helpless. Seeing this, the fleet in its tracks. The Muslim commander then sent a message to the Roman emperor. Instead of fighting on the volatile sea, let's find a large piece of land and fight a ground battle. Hearing this, the Roman emperor began to laugh at the Muslims. He asked his army what they should do, and the entire Roman army began chanting. They knew perfectly well that no one could match the Muslims on land, but on the sea, the Romans were the undisputed kings. The emperor replied, "The battle will be on the sea, on the sea." While the Romans were mocking the Muslim army, the Muslim commander ordered all anchors to be raised. Just as the anchors were pulled up, suddenly, out of nowhere, the direction of the wind completely changed. The Muslims began to chant in triumph. They unfurled all their sails, and the 200 Muslim warships surged forward at full speed toward the Romans. Seeing the wind change so suddenly, the Roman emperor panicked. He remembered a dream he had seen a few days prior. When he had shared the dream with his astrologers, they told him, "My king, we wish you had never slept that night and never seen this dream, because it only has one meaning: defeat." The Muslim ships rapidly closed the distance. Since this was an era before gunpowder and cannons were invented, naval combat was fought hand-to-hand with swords and arrows on the decks of ships. Before clashing, the Muslims had securely tied all their ships together with thick ropes. This brilliant tactic gave the Muslims a massive advantage. Their linked ships became a highly stable, floating platform. Because of this stability, the Muslims' arrows hit their targets perfectly. Meanwhile, the Roman ships were rocking violently on the waves, causing their archers to miss every single shot. This battle was so intense that it is remembered in history as the Naval Battle of Yarmouk, the Battle of the Masts, as it was the largest naval clash of its time. When the fleets collided, the Muslims even tied their ships to the Roman ships, turning the middle of the ocean into a massive floating battlefield. As this fierce combat raged on, dark clouds gathered in the sky, and a violent thunderstorm erupted over the sea. Yet, the battle continued through the raging storm. The Muslims were winning, but suddenly the Romans launched a massive, concentrated attack directly at the Muslim commander, Abdullah bin Sa'ad. They hooked his ship and began dragging it away from the battle line, hoping that seeing their commander captured or killed would shatter the Muslims' morale. The Muslim commander was even wounded. But finally, a Muslim soldier risked his life, leaped forward, and cut the heavy ropes connecting the ships, saving the commander's life. He fell into the sea and was martyred. Witnessing this sacrifice, the Muslims' passion multiplied. They launched an attack so devastating that the 500 Roman ships began to fall one by one. The Roman emperor finally realized that all was lost. It is said that he took off his royal crown, disguised himself in the clothes of an ordinary soldier, and barely managed to flee the battlefield with his life. And just like that, during the reign of Caliph Uthman, the Muslims won the Yarmouk of the seas. The backbone of the Roman Empire was completely broken, and their emperor was wounded and humiliated. Despite this incredible victory, Caliph Uthman knew very well that directly conquering the Roman capital from the sea was almost impossible. So he formulated a massive, unprecedented master plan. He sent a letter and a map to his distant governor, detailing the future strategy of Islam. Uthman's plan was: first, the Muslims will conquer Spain, then France, then Italy, then Greece, and finally, after conquering all of southern Europe, the Muslims would attack the Roman capital from the rear. However, this plan never came to pass, and to this day, Uthman's grand strategy remains unfulfilled. Just as this plan was drawn up, Caliph Uthman, R.A., was tragically martyred by a rebel group of Muslims. But before his martyrdom, Caliph Uthman had successfully and permanently obliterated the 700-year-old Roman navy that once ruled the oceans of the world. Subscribe.